Krásný, hezký večer. Ještě jednou u Stanley Parable, kdy jsem konečně otevřel epilog, kdy jsem zjistil, že jediná chyba, co jsem hrál, proč jsem tohle nemohl otevřít, bylo, že jsem musel 4krát vypnout a zapnout hru a na začátku si pokecat s tím narratorem. Jak tam jsou takový ty hodiny a tak. To by mě fakt nenapadlo. Takže si dáme epilog. Epilogu vím to, že na začátku nesmíte dělat nic. Takže si dáme teďka klídeček. A ona se postupně bude měnit scéna. Já musím počkat na specifickou scénu. Měsíček na nebi a sluníčko vychází. A tohle je to, kdy vy máte vyrazit. Musíme jít vlastně po tom provazu. Tady se vlastně můžete podívat, co se stalo. No more spin-off, no more sequel. Jo, a tady najdete poslední sošky. S tím, že musíte teda se sbírat samozřejmě všechny. Máte 26 sošek, to by mělo být všechno snad. Se dostanete sem. Vlastně jediné, co musíte udělat, je zapnout počítač a jít se bavit s tím týpkem. A nesmíte tu přeskakovat věci. Burn. Ano, uděláme Stanley Parable 3. Jo, a teďka dáme třeba Whisper. This is absurd. I love it. Yes. A tady musíme dát Let's do it. Díky tomu posuneme hru jakoby na 3. Tak. Ano, přesně, trofy mašina je opravená. It's Conspiro in it's forever. Yeah. No, rozhodně si užiju svůj předposlední achievement Whisper of Circles.
This is the story of all of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. You see, Stanley, I've been reflecting on the Stanley Parable and about how roundly disappointing this ultra-deluxe version has turned out to be. The original Stanley Parable was a landmark, and any new content for it should live up to that legacy. So forget this ultra-deluxe nonsense. I say we take it one step even further. Which is why I'm very proud to announce for the first time ever, the Stanley Parable 2.
Tak. A teď už
Isn't this far superior
No
to a
je
measly
žádný
port with a few
problém
minor additions? Think of all the new territory we'll cover with a fully fledged
dokončit
sequel. An
achievement.
entirely new experience, built from the ground up. Why, there are so many possibilities. It could go in so many different directions. This is what
Já jsem
fans
hlavně
have
RSL
truly been
zjistil,
asking
kde jsem
for.
celou dobu
Now,
dělal
to be clear,
problém.
I haven't quite nailed down what exactly the
Jsem to
Stanley
správně
Parable truly
vyřešil.
can be, but let's take a look at some of the features I've been developing for it. I figure that if I can loosely organize a handful of interesting concepts,
Tak teď
that surely the game
půjdeme.
will sort of naturally spring up around them. Here we are. Go on, try out some of the new features. Now, here's something special. You remember that broken test trophy that got left in the game on accident? Well, I'm developing a technology to simply give you the trophy. Yes. You see, you'll come to this lever, and when you pull
A je
it,
to
the
tam.
trophy will be...
Máme tu
See, the machine
trofej.
is not working yet since... Wait. What in the holy hell is going on? You got the trophy? Why did the machine work? Stanley, I didn't fix it. I didn't do anything to it. I swear, it was broken just a second ago. Who fixed it? Is someone here? Are we being watched?
Takže my jsme ochceli toho narratora.
Composure? Composure. Yes, as you can see, the machine is working as normal, as I intended. It truly speaks to the awe-inspiring magic of the Stanley Parable 2.
Ne,
Breathe.
já jsem to ani nemohl zastreamovat RSL, ten postup, protože abych se sem dostal, bylo, jak jsem správně udělal, já jsem dobře odehrál ty trofeje, až na podruhé, na poprvé jsem spletl trofej, takže by se mi to neotevřelo. A na podruhé jsem dobře odehrál ty trofeje, ale problém byl v tom, že já jsem tu hru musel vypnout a zapnout 4krát. A vždycky tam mít na začátku rozhovor, jak si je to nastavování hodin a tak já jsem musel mít 4krát rozhovor s tím týpkem, aby se mi otevřel epilog, který hned, jak se otevřel, jsem začal streamovat, takže začátek tam máš. Vy v tom epilogu čekáte, než prostě se něco stane. Vy můžete jít na jedno místo, pozbíráte poslední trofeje, takže máte 26 trofejí, jo. A vlastně potom přijdete k počítači, tam vedete rozhovor s tím, že se domluvíte, že uděláte úplně novou hru. Takže tohle je pomyslně Stanley Parable 3. A on tam řekne, i narrator na začátku tady té dvojky, že do dalšího dílu tu trofej opraví. Takže když zapnete rádoby, se dostanete do v uvozovkách 3. dílu, tak vlastně je to opravené a vy to můžete jít zmáčknout. A protože už máme teda jakoby konec, ten jeden achievement si udělám později sám, tak co udělat lepšího, než to zakončit pádem do nekonečné díry.
This is in fact a hole that you can fall down forever. That's right. Infinite falling. You can fall until the end of time if you like. A stunning leap forward for video games as a medium. You see, isn't it wonderful? One of my more ingenious concoctions, if I do say so. Now then, since you've gotten to see the infinite hole, you can press the teleport button to pop back up to the top, and we can continue onward. Great. Now, I'm very excited to show you even more of my ideas for the sequel. Okay, and I guess we're back in the hole now. Did you really need to see it again? I don't know what else there is to say, Stanley. It's an infinite hole. It's exactly what you're doing right now, but forever. There really are so many other fascinating exhibits that I've prepared for you. I really spent quite a lot of time on all this, and I would very much like to show you some more of them. How about we go ahead and press that teleport button again so we can get back to what's really important about... Oh, goodness. Well, this is rather embarrassing, Stanley. I'll be honest with you. I truly did not believe that anyone would actually stay in the hole long enough to hit the bottom. Yes, I know, I told you the hole was infinite, but come on. Who actually wants to fall forever? The hole was plenty deep. It was more than deep enough, in my opinion. Maybe it's you who likes falling too much.
Shit.
Maybe you're the problem. Look, things got a little heated there. I think we both said some things we didn't mean. Why don't we just put all this behind us and agree to just call the hole mostly infinite? If that works for you, then go ahead and press the teleport button.
A teď ti ukážu, že jsme ve Stanley Parable 3 a Whisper of Circles jsem si vymyslel sám. Vy tam máte možnost ze slov se skládat vlastní název. A jak vidíš, tady můžu zapnout právě ten epilog. A já když už jsem v tom, tak teda dodělám tu akci. S tím, že jdeme se odpálit ještě s tím kyblíkem.
Warmth spread through Stanley's arms. With the bucket in his arms again, he was home. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Když jsem ten achievement otevřel, tak prostě mám chuť si to zahrát.
Perhaps his boss's office was where he coming to a staircase. Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire if not for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds of confusion and chaos. It would be with him always. The bucket would. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes. This is certainly the most logical explanation.
Rozhodně to mluví jakoby prostě, že ten bucket všechno ví a tak. No, víme, že neumíme s bucketem opustit místo jako to, takže...
The elevator raced downward, plummeting towards an unknown fate. It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him,
v podstatě tady je možnost odehrát všechny konce s kyblíkem a bude to určitě měnit, takže ale když tak už potom najdi na internetu, protože tohle je teda poslední Stanley Parable, co hraju na stream.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves. The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being
rozhodně je zážitek. Tohle není hra jako hra. Tohle je prostě interaktivní zážitek. Když jsem o tom dneska vyprávěl šéfovi v práci a strašně se smál, když jsem mu vysvětloval teorii, že všechno je kbelík, jenom já nejsem kbelík. Protože když nic není kbelík, tak všechno musí být.
These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind. No! He screamed into the bucket. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control. Never! He squeezed
a má trošku jiné hlášky teďka, mám pocit s tím bucketem.
In the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except for the bucket. But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery... But at the last second, the bucket jumped in and pressed the button to turn on the controls. Stanley gasped in horror. Had this been the bucket's plan all along? To take over the machine and claim the power for itself? How could the bucket have betrayed him like this? Stanley was prepared to throw the bucket away in disgust when suddenly an image appeared upon the enormous screen. Birds. Silly, silly birds. The control buttons became active again. Stanley flipped through one video of silly birds after another, and then it dawned on him. This wasn't a mind control facility at all. It was a facility for monitoring and surveilling silly birds all over the world. The mind controls were only a facade to disguise its true intentions.
So, je tohle true ending?
This all along. Stanley marveled at the metal genius in his hands, the one who had pointed him towards this incredible discovery. Stanley and the bucket never found freedom because they spent the rest of their lives here in this place, flipping through live streams of the silliest birds imaginable.
Tohle jsem taky nečekal. Ne, tohle je rád.
This was surely the best, and Stanley was happy.
Au. Stejně jak to ještě není. Jdeme zkusit jiný konec s Pelíkem. Dobře, tam jsme vyzkoušeli dva konce s Pelíkem. Teďka vyzkoušíme ještě jeden konec, no, vyzkoušíme prostě konce s Pelíkem, který nám dokončí. Ti pták si mě navnadili vyzkoušet ještě něco nového. Teď si dáme ten šílený, jak pořád chodíte v kuse.
He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then, something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, he looked down at the bucket in his arms. Am I crazy? He asked the bucket. The bucket returned his gaze, but said nothing at all. That's strange, Stanley thought. Usually the bucket is a source of guidance and wisdom for me in difficult times such as these. He held the bucket close, yet felt none of its familiar reassurance and comfort. And that's when Stanley realized, this isn't my bucket. It's just a normal, everyday bucket. Someone else's bucket, perhaps. How did I end up with someone else's bucket? This is all terribly wrong. Surely no good would come from this. Who knows what sorts of bizarre hallucinations Stanley might experience without the psychologically grounding presence of his bucket. And indeed, now he noticed that the rooms were repeating, which was, of course, very odd. And now he felt himself off the ground. Oh, gracious, he exclaimed. Without my bucket, I've gone truly mad. Where is it? I must find it. Far off in the distance now, he heard it, calling to him.
Stanley! Stanley, it's me! The bucket!
Could it truly be? He rushed forward from room to room.
Já musím najít svůj kýbl.
None of them were his.
Já chci
None of
kýbl.
them were his special bucket.
Come to me, Stanley!
Já chci svůj speciální kýbl.
He had to find the bucket. He had to return to his old friend. It was the only way to truly restore his sanity. And then suddenly, he froze dead in his tracks. He knew where the voice of the bucket had been coming from. The real bucket was inside of him all along. It was incredibly painful. Stanley doubled over in agony and blacked out. This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, picked up her bucket of comfort and security, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town, talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. Right away, she knew what the problem was. This man had no bucket. Of course, he'd gone mad, ranting and raving about a narrator describing all of his actions and how everything is predetermined and free will is an illusion and it's all just a video game. It could all have been prevented if only...
Teďka si dáme ten konec, kde nás to nakonec rozmázlo.
He'd forgotten his bucket at home in the first place. How cruel the world can be, Mariella thought, and she hugged her own bucket even tighter. But of course, she had no time for this. There were a myriad of confusing problems she would soon have to confront at work, for which her bucket would provide absolute guidance and total clarity on everything. Heck yes, she thought to herself, my life kicks ass. And she backflipped all the way to work. All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. The good old bucket. Just Stanley and the bucket. Off on another thrilling adventure together. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left. Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where, coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have but Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation. Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death. The door behind them was not shut. Stanley and the bucket still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful death for each of them.
Ja, jdeme na to. Tak uvidíme, jestli se něco stane, nebo...
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's warmth and comfort had turned out to be. To be sure, it puts the mind and the soul at ease to embrace the bucket, but what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket.
Možná já zachráním kýbl, že ho odhodím.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end, as it was crushed violently to death. It was a shame, the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a glorious bucket to behold.
The bucket. Exibice Grand Bucketu, jo?
Can you see how arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that the bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be in his short life?
Bože, právě kýble. No, tohle jsem Eresil taky nečekal, jo?
No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one. It is man who should kneel before the bucket.
Celkově ty konce z Pelíky jsou takové asi nejlepší.
Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong. Let Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another beautiful bucket. We can save the world's buckets from their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place as ruler, as leader, as commander of a new world, a new vision.
Potom jsou tu ty dlouhé konce. Možná zkusím nějaký z těch dlouhých konců.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room.
Where are we going today? The bucket asked.
Stanley just smiled. Anywhere they went together would be... Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the
Tohle je ten konec, který jedete nějakých 18 minut.
And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? No, never mind.
Možná se v podstatě ten nejdelší.
Stanley took the door on his left to go back, and so the two of them detoured through the maintenance section and walked straight ahead to the opposite door.
Měl být ten, jak ho prostě budu blbnout a... What?
You see, your friends and I are concerned for you, Stanley. We've come together here because we care about you very much. It's this bucket you're carrying around everywhere. The bucket isn't even from the original Stanley Parable. It's just sequel content. We're the ones that matter, Stanley. Classic characters from the first game, like the Adventure Line and the Broom Closet. Because that's what fans want from a sequel. They want more of their favorite jokes, not this bucket that they've never seen before. Yes, I know I'm the one who gave you the bucket, but you're spending too much time with it. Don't you want another story involving the Adventure Line? We could make the Adventure Line go somewhere new. Yes, yes, that's what the fans want. Let's do it.
Je vtipné, jak se ty prostě postavil mě, snaží postarat.
Look at that wacky line. Who knows where it'll go off to next? Oh, and it played some silly music as well. Now this is what the Stanley Parable is all about. Don't you remember all those great jokes from the original dialogue?
Also, Stanley is addicted to drugs and hookers.
Yes, it's as classic now as it was back then. Let's do it for the fans, Stanley. Let's give them more content exactly like this. But if we want to do that, you're going to have to give something up. Don't you get it, Stanley?
Okay, tohle vypadá docela temně.
That's why I'm very proud to introduce a brand new character. This is the Bucket Destroyer.
Bucket Destroyer.
I think it'll make a wonderful new addition to the rich lore of the Stanley Parable. True, it also was not in the original game, but it's such a well-fleshed-out character with so much personality that to me it already feels as though it's been part of the cast all along. Don't you agree? Can you guess what the Bucket Destroyer does? Surely you don't need me to spell it out for you. Go ahead now, Stanley. Say goodbye to the bucket, and then pop it into the machine when you're ready. Now listen to me. It's crucial that you give it the bucket. I don't know what the Bucket Destroyer will do if it can't destroy your bucket. Destroying buckets is all it knows. That is its singular personality trait.
Tam chtěl dát, ale...
To hear you saying, how does a character with only one personality trait deserve to join the pantheon of beloved Stanley Parable characters? Well, you see, if you were to really explore the Bucket Destroyer, you would see that its desire to crush buckets is so densely loaded with complexity and nuance that it's really like 10 personality traits. What other object in this game can you even say that about? The broom closet? Certainly not. I wonder what sort of Bucket Destroyer merchandise the fans will be clamoring for after this. Okay, the Bucket Destroyer is getting very upset now. You'll have to hurry and feed it. We can't get back to the classic Stanley Parable characters like the Adventure Line or the Bucket Destroyer until you crush that damn bucket. Quickly now, the fans are waiting. Do it, the fans, Stanley. Give the fans what they want. Hurry and... The Bucket Destroyer, my prized creation. You had so much potential. We were going to do such marvelous things with you, tell such spellbinding stories about you. All of it squandered now. Goodbye, new friend. For the moment in time that you were here, you were magnificent.
Už mě napadá jenom jeden určitě ending, který by šel asi udělat s Bucketem.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. A good bucket, a strong bucket.
Tam na ten jeden se nedostanu, to mě pošle do toho bucket contentu.
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was.
Můžu spadnout bucketem.
No, never mind.
Zabít se samozřejmě.
Stanley took the door on his left to go.
Jo, dva konce mě ještě napadají.
No.
Tak začneme tím kratším.
Don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Go there. Go to the cargo lift.
Okay, this is day number 295, tape number... I don't even know. I've lost track. Nothing feels real anymore. The longer I study this bucket, the less sense anything makes. The sheer euphoria I feel every time I pick it up. No matter how many times I've done it, it's always the same feeling.
Jako určitě jsou tu i konce, které jsem nenašel, nebo tak, jo. Myslím, že ta hra má být nějakých 20 konců, 20 až 40. Myslím, že 20 má jenom ta původní hra. Že tady se to snad zdvojnásobí.
Haven't figured out why I see the world so differently when this bucket is in my arms.
Ale prostě všechny tyhle konce jsou důkazem toho, že všechno se točí okolo belíku.
What do I do with this treasure? I can monetize it. Yeah. It's unthinkable the amounts of money people will pay for even just an hour with the bucket. This is my golden ticket. But I have to be careful, because as soon as this gets out, there's going to be a target on my back. Even now, I don't know who might be trying to get me. What's that? Who's there?
To je trošku znepokojivé. OK, a ještě jeden teda mě napadá. Bucket konec.
The embrace of an old friend, a weathered companionship that stands the test of time.
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest. This was not the correct way to the meeting room.
Možná zkusím dvě
Stanley
ještě.
felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be.
Protože vlastně tady, když jdete,
And the bucket turned out to be correct.
tak on vám dává možnost se vrátit na správnou cestu.
Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No,
Said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Good.
Said the bucket.
Now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do.
Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket had spoken to him.
Tady vlastně bylo to potom s tou manželkou, myslím, ne?
In here.
Said the bucket.
Go into this dark room over here.
Stanley once again obeyed blindly.
Now pick up the phone.
Said the bucket.
Pick...
This is the sad story of a man named Stanley and his bucket. Once upon a time, I gave Stanley a bucket because I thought he was lonely and could use a friend. And then, very distressingly, he began to believe the bucket could speak to him. The Stanley Parable Reassurance Bucket was merely meant to provide the comforting glow of companionship. It doesn't literally talk and give you orders. Whatever Stanley is hearing the bucket say to him is just in his head. Lately, I've been concerned about him. Wouldn't you be concerned as well? To see him delusional like this, obsessing over an inanimate metal object? I want to say something to him, but I don't know how I can convince him. I don't know if he'll listen to me. Oh, I'll try anyway. Stanley, can you hear me? Listen to me. It's just a bucket. It can't think, it can't talk. All it will ever truly do for you is effectively transfer a liquid from one location to a different location. That's it. It doesn't do anything else. You see, he's not listening. He's still taking orders from the bucket. You know, once upon a time it was me he took orders from. Me he trusted and listened to. Now all he cares about is his awful bucket. This stupid hunk of metal. It's sad, but I suppose he doesn't need me anymore. From now on, he's just going to cling to this bucket, this cold, empty bucket, this sort of shiny bucket. Well, I'll give it this. The bucket does have a nice shine to it. Yes, I suppose on closer inspection that it doesn't quite look like your average hardware store bucket. It's just a little more, what am I trying to say? Sturdier, more capable of transporting liquid. Like it would be better at moving an amount of water from one room to another. Oh my God, what am I saying? Better at carrying water from room to room. It's a bucket. It's literally just a bucket.
Why do I feel some need to point out the ways in which it's so much more than just a regular bucket? Oh no. I'm having feelings for the bucket.
Yeah.
No.
Bucket
What's going
poster.
on? Why do I want to be with the bucket? Hear what the bucket has to say. Do anything it asks. What's wrong with me? I don't understand. Perhaps if I had the bucket, this would be less confusing. Yes. The bucket could tell me what to do in this troublesome situation. Stanley, give me the bucket. Give it to me. Give me the bucket, Stanley. I need it. Give it to me now. Give it or I'll...
Okay, a to máme asi všechny teda ending, které známe. Já se ještě podívám, jestli... Když půjdeme tady přes ty špatné dveře, jestli nás to potom hodí zpátky na ten správný run. Nebo jestli se něco změní.
The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back, and so the two of them detoured through the maintenance section and walked straight ahead to the opposite door.
Vypadá, že vás to akorát hodí prostě na
Stanley needed the bucket's
dobrý ten.
comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd come into a staircase. Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs.
Víš, Resel, tohle jsem ještě neukázal jednu věc. Tady jsme teďka nově. Jo, byli. Ještě mi napadá jedno místo, kam bych se možná mohl podívat. Ne, ono už to je zavřené. Tak si potom dáme ještě jeden run. Jinak, ty si neviděla tohle. No vás to nikdy nikam neveze, jo? A tady můžeš být jak dlouho chceš ve své podstatě. Ještě to nikam neodveze. Když vždycky skončíš na stejném místě.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire if not for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds of confusion and chaos. It would be with him always. The bucket would, and he knew it. The two of them were inseparable. At this point, Stanley was so absorbed in the tender spiritual connection he shared with the bucket that he didn't notice the keypad behind the boss's desk. Nor in his bliss of simply being near the bucket did he have any notion that the PIN number for the keypad was 2845. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yet.
Dáme si ještě jednou tuhle hru. Jestli nám to nehodí hlášku, to bude teda poslední.
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go
Helme
to the
se,
meeting
je
room.
to
Perhaps he
jiné.
had simply missed a memo. Not everyone is so lucky to have a bucket, but Stanley is a very lucky fellow. Very lucky indeed.
Aspoň co se
Stanley
začátku
clutched the
týče.
bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left. Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's... Oh, Stanley, can you feel it? The broom closet. It wants the bucket. You can feel that, can't you? The aura of jealousy? It's as clear as day. This broom closet believes it deserves the bucket. I can really feel it now. It's a bucket. It belongs in a broom closet. That's what the broom closet is trying to say here. It's supposed to go with the other cleaning supplies. Good for you, Stanley. Don't give in. Don't hand over the bucket. I know how hard it must be, given the pressure that the broom closet is putting on your shoulders right now, but you have to be strong. This is your bucket. This is your companion and lifelong friend. You can't hand it over. Oh, no. We're getting into name-calling now, it seems. Is this how low the broom closet has sunk, that it has to resort to this stream of petty insults simply in order to get you to hand over the bucket? Stanley, I never liked this broom closet for a variety of reasons, but even this is worse than I had imagined. And wait, now the broom closet has the gall to imply that you and the bucket are not truly deep and lasting friends? That your relationship is purely superficial and convenient? That your life is so banal and meaningless that you'd feel the same sort of kinship towards any inanimate object which happened to lay in your path in an even partially enticing manner? Well, I'd never. Go on, Stanley. Lay into it. Really tell the broom closet off for its demeaning comments. Expand on the wide variety of experiences you and the bucket have shared together. Go through each of them point by point. Share your journal entries detailing the rich emotional landscape of your feelings for the bucket as they have changed and evolved over the years. Let him have it.
Abych ho tu nejradši někde položil, ale...
Okay, I've got you something which I think will help settle this debate once and for all. Here we go. There. Now it's settled. No more debate. No more discussion.
Okay.
Take a hike, broom closet, with all your meandering philosophical diatribes about the nature of cleaning supplies and their relationship to broom closets in the natural order of things. Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the
Zakončíme to
office.
ptáčky.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revel, but Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket
Ať aspoň máme nějaký hezký ending nakonec.
guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation. Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves.
Skočit na do místnosti.
But just as Stanley was about to proceed further into the mind control facility, he tripped and fell over the railing and into the dark void below. Thankfully, he fell directly onto the bucket, which safely cushioned his fall.
Vidíš, co mi připomněl, že jsem mohl sem spadnout. No. Tak tohle bude asi poslední.
The bucket could find no way out of this enormous pit, and so eventually they decided that the best thing to do would be to simply get comfortable down here. So they set up a little couch and relaxed. It really wasn't so bad down here, a bit cold perhaps. After some time had gone by, they installed a few shelves.
Vidíš, úplně si mi jako něco připomněla a máme poslední zajímavý ending.
But it wasn't until the rugs and the standing lamps came in that it really started to feel like a home. In fact, after some time, Stanley realized that it had been ages since he had even thought of the mind control facility at all. He'd never gotten to fully explore what was up there, never been able to unearth the many mysteries of the mind control facility. This lack of closure began to eat at him. Soon he was dwelling on his regrets, and the state of their home slowly decayed as Stanley became withdrawn and neglected the cleaning. It unsettled the bucket deeply. Stanley wasn't usually like this. The bucket tried to reach out to him again and again, but to no avail. All Stanley could think about, all he could talk about, was going back, doing it over again, staying on the path. It was a mistake to leave the path. It was a mistake. It was a mistake. I need to do what the narrator says. I need to see the true ending. This made no sense at all to the bucket, which was simply trying to live its life down here as comfortably as possible. Yet Stanley was inconsolable. This isn't an ending. This is just a hole in the ground. The bucket sighed. True, it wasn't an ending. But it's where we happen to be. And maybe
Ne, tohle jsou prostě... Máš místa, kde to má nějakým způsobem může končit, že jo?
It's what the bucket was counting on. The two of them waited for a very long time.
To máme konec. Tak doufám, že se vám Stanley Parable líbil. Já jsem si hru neskonale užil. Je plná vtipu, satiry a všeho možného. Mám ukončeno tak nějak všechno, co jsem chtěl asi. Děkuji za prodlouženou jízdu, jo. S tím, že teda žádný stream, žádné video už teda vydávat nebudu. Já si akorát udělám v úterý ten jeden achievement. Prostřed noci. A tím budu mít všechno z krku. Takže na viděnou u případně nedělních streamů. Jinak posunu ten Ghostwire ne na 11, ale až na 12 hodin. Já tu budu mít ráno ještě kluky, takže myslím, že až po okolo 12, jako před 12 budou někteří odjíždět, tak až potom. Takže papa.